Arirang. Arirang.
Arirang. Arirang.
Why is BTS's comeback album after a 3-year break titled Arirang? The word Arirang is one of the fundamental building blocks of Korea's history, and its story dates back centuries. However, an event that took place 130 years ago within this story has become the inspiration behind BTS releasing this album today. So if you're ready, let's take a little trip into the past. There are only 2 days left until BTS's comeback. This return is much bigger, much deeper, and completely different from the comebacks we're used to. Because this is not just a new album, this is not just a concert, and this is not just music. This is actually a story. And at the center of this story, there is a single word, Arirang. As you know, the name of BTS's new album is Arirang. At first glance, this name might seem new or ordinary to those who don't live in Korea, but in Korea, there is almost no one who doesn't know this word. That's why the moment the album was announced, it created an incredible level of attention in Korea. So what does Arirang really mean, and why is it so important? Arirang is the name of Korea's most well-known folk song. In fact, many people see this folk song as almost like a national anthem of Korea. From children to the elderly, everyone knows this song and most people can sing it by heart. But what makes Arirang special is not just how widespread it is. The truly interesting part is this. Arirang is not a single song. In reality, it is a song that has been continuously changed, rewritten, and performed in different ways by people over hundreds of years. Officially, it is said that there are more than 3,000 versions of it, and the real number is probably much higher. Some of you might remember that in 2016, BTS performed a stage in France where they combined 4 different versions of Arirang. So in fact, BTS's connection to Arirang goes back nearly 10 years. And actually, an event that took place 130 years ago related to this song helps us better understand why BTS chose this song and this name. Because there is a strong connection between the events in that story and what BTS has experienced. Later in the video, I will also share this 130-year-old story with you. However, the exact meaning of this word is unknown. There are many different theories about it, but none of them have been definitively accepted. In fact, some scholars say that this word doesn't necessarily have to carry a specific meaning. In other words, this word exists not to explain something, but to make you feel something. That's why Arirang is difficult to translate directly, because what matters here is not the literal meaning of the word, but the emotion it conveys. But what truly makes Arirang special is not just its musical structure, but the meaning it carries. Because this song holds the history of the Korean people. During the Japanese occupation, people sang Arirang. At that time, this song was not just music, it became the voice of resistance. Later, during the Korean War, when families were separated, the same song was sung again, this time for hope, for the dream of reunion. One of the clearest signs of how important Arirang is came in 2012, when it was recognized by UNESCO as an Intangible Cultural Heritage. This is actually a very big deal, because the things UNESCO includes on this list are not ordinary. They are cultural heritages that are extremely valuable for a country and must be preserved for generations. In other words, Arirang is no longer just a song that belongs to Korea. It is officially recognized as a shared value of all humanity that must be protected. Now let's get to the most anticipated question. Why did BTS specifically choose the name Arirang? In a live broadcast, the group explained that they chose this name because they wanted to show who they are and where they come from. Because BTS is no longer just a music group. For years, they have been on the global stage, filling stadiums and creating songs in different languages. But despite all of that, they have never become a group disconnected from their roots. On the contrary, they have consistently emphasized their Korean identity at every opportunity. We've seen this in their music videos, stage designs, the instruments they use, and the visual details they incorporate. In other words, they have actively worked to introduce Korean culture to a global audience. That's also why they were chosen as cultural ambassadors of Korea. At the same time, the message of the song is actually very similar to BTS's story in recent years. In the song, there is separation, there is longing, there is waiting, and in the end, there is reunion. The BTS members were apart for a long time due to their military service. Fans missed them, the group stayed away from the stage, and now they are coming back together again. This feels like a modern version of the story told by Arirang, so this album is not just a reference to the past, it is also a reflection of the journey BTS themselves have gone through. The reason BTS named their new album Arirang actually dates back to the year 1896. In 1896, several young Koreans were forced to leave their country. They went to Canada, but soon ran out of money. On top of that, they didn't know English, so they struggled to express themselves. Then they went to the Japanese consulate and tried to reach Korea's representative in the United States. This person helped them and made it possible for them to enroll in a university. One day at the university, they were asked to sing a song. Because they didn't know English, they felt hesitant. But in the end, they sang a song from their own culture. And the song they chose was Arirang. Everyone present at that moment was so deeply moved by the song that the officials asked the students to sing it again, and they recorded it. That recording became the first known recording of Arirang. Now let's pause and think about this. 7 Korean students. How many members does BTS have? 7. This could be a coincidence, but honestly, it doesn't feel like one to me. It feels incredibly meaningful. In the past, 7 young Koreans trying to share their culture in America, and today, 7 Korean artists representing their culture on the biggest stages in the world. It almost feels like a story that began in the past is continuing today through BTS. And if you remember, the animation film released for BTS's album also told the story of 7 Korean students. Now try watching that animation again, this time knowing this story. If we set Arirang aside for a moment and look at the logo, you can still see elements of Korean culture. When people looked at the album logo, many noticed that it resembles Hangul letters, the Korean alphabet. Some fans also said that the logo looks similar to the lines found on the Korean flag. At the same time, if you pay close attention to the stage designs prepared for BTS's world tour, you can see that they are inspired by the Korean flag as well. And of course, there is the concert they will hold at Gwanghwamun Square on March 21st. At first glance, it might seem like just a big concert, but in reality, there is a much deeper meaning behind this decision. Because Gwanghwamun is not an ordinary place. This is the very heart of Seoul. But not just geographically, historically as well, it is one of the most important locations in Korea. During the Joseon dynasty, this was the center of the state. The palace was here, the administration was here, the heart of the country was beating here. So for hundreds of years, this has been Korea's main axis. This square has witnessed everything throughout history. It was there during times of prosperity, it was there during the Japanese occupation, and it was also where people gathered during democratic protests. So this is not just a square, it is a place where the history of the Korean people has unfolded. And now BTS will perform right at this very spot. BTS is a group capable of filling the largest stadiums in the world. If they wanted, they could have chosen a much easier and more controlled environment to perform in. They could have focused less on Korean culture and produced more globally oriented songs to strengthen their global presence. But they didn't lose their identity to become popular. As they became more popular, they introduced their identity to the world. With this comeback, this is exactly what BTS is doing. They are stepping slightly away from the image of Western pop stars and positioning themselves more as the cultural face of Korea. When we look at the surroundings of Gwanghwamun Square, this becomes even clearer. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, embassies, and important government institutions are located in this area. So when BTS performs here, they are not just performing for fans, they are also sending a message to the center of the world. Many cultural critics are saying the same thing at this point. BTS is no longer just an idol group, but a cultural phenomenon. And with this comeback, that reality becomes even more evident. Get ready, because with the Arirang comeback, BTS is about to make history, and we are going to witness this moment. Recently, the K-pop industry had been moving in a more Western direction. Songs were almost abandoning the Korean language, and the industry seemed to be drifting away from its own culture. But with the Arirang album and comeback concert, BTS has introduced Korean culture to the entire world in such a powerful way and created such a massive impact that I'm confident they will reshape the K-pop industry once again. This comeback reminds me of a quote by Kim Gu, one of the most important leaders in Korea's independence movement. Kim Gu always wanted his country to be strong, but he wasn't talking about military or economic power. What he truly wanted was cultural strength, because in his view, culture has the power to bring happiness not just to one country, but to the entire world. And when we look at BTS today, this is exactly what they are doing. They are striving to share the strength of their culture with people all around the world. This whole story is truly meaningful, and I feel very happy to be a part of it and to be able to follow it closely, because BTS is writing history right before our eyes, and we are witnessing that history. I'm really excited for what's coming in 2 days. You can also share your thoughts about this comeback in the comments. I'll be here on Friday after the new album is released, and we'll talk about it together. Don't forget to follow me so you don't miss it. Goodbye.